Lucy Letby. I wasn't planning to talk about Lucy Letby until David Davis decided whether he will campaign on her behalf, but a strange development prompts me to speak now before it becomes illegal for a convenient length of time. I feel sorry for the parents dragged through years of prosecutions, inquiries, and yet more investigations when they've already undergone a burden, a sorrow no person should bear. Lucy Letby has been given a whole life order and is one of the most reviled people in the UK. But her case is a funny one. From hero nurse who was given the hard cases, to suspect, to 3 police interviews, to her garden being dug up, to 23 months on remand, 2 prosecutions and a public inquiry. Despite the chorus of doubts about her conviction from medical, statistical, legal, and political figures, the inquiry refused to consider her guilt, and refused to consider the trial, and refused to allow her lawyer standing to be present as her lawyer. Now, there's going to be months of people saying all sorts of things about her, and it does seem odd to think that a fair and even inquiry wouldn't allow that. Now, I hear we're going to prosecute a woman under a whole life order without the right to appeal or release. She's facing another 60 years in prison. Do we intend to keep her in prison after her death? I remember when she was found guilty in the first trial, it smelt like she was presumed guilty. I noted that History Debunked, who I always respect the opinion of, highlighted similarities with a case in Holland where the nurse was proved innocent. After that, we went back and prosecuted her on the charges the jury couldn't reach a decision on. Job done. We got all the charges. This trial was so thorough that no one can afford to buy the transcript. And there are some uncomfortable elements to this case. For a start, she murdered loads of children, had patient data in her home, and wrote some pretty damning confessions on post-it notes. So it's a slam dunk, right? But on the other hand, the notes were written on the advice of a psychologist, as she was advised not to speak formally to a psychologist before a trial. She was on heavy medication for, one would assume, depression, and had the police making a song and dance, digging up her garden. Were they expecting to find bodies there? The key witness wrote to the authorities, offering his expertise, and experts have asked whether he built the case for her rather than validating it. In another case, the judge thought his evidence was written to achieve guilt rather than to be fairly reasoned. The test, which proved 2 children died of insulin poisoning, was specifically not certified to reach a finding that someone had been poisoned with insulin. She was always in the hospital when children died. Well, when you exclude all the deaths where she wasn't in the hospital, this isn't surprising or statistically valid. The media salaciously offered the point that she was almost caught red-handed. What does this mean? Was this raised in court? Almost caught red-handed? So she wasn't caught red-handed. Does that mean she was in the room? I don't know. I think it's meaningless headline grabber. It just confuses me when I pause to think. It is said that the police briefed the media. Why do you need to brief the media when they're sitting in court hearing the evidence? That's why trials are open. An x-ray of one baby was used as proof that she killed the child by pumping air in. Yet an expert says there are many potential causes, and the expert who actually said she'd done that said they believe it was a natural death and could not have been done on the day, so it would have been on a day when she wasn't there. I do not know enough to say I think she's guilty or innocent. If I had to guess, to be honest, I'd lean guilty. Death of extreme neonatal children is not that rare. Bad midwifery care is not as rare as one would hope if my friends' experiences are anything to go by. I personally think she seems rather fragile and damaged. But is it the process she underwent, the drugs she took, the guilt she felt, or a pre-existing mental state? If it's the latter, then I hope the inquiry will ask the NHS probing questions on this. All I say is don't the authorities seem hell-bent on prosecuting her and making sure that the inquiry doesn't ask any awkward questions? What would be the fallout if the NHS trust or trusts, where so many children died, if it turned out that she didn't do it at all, or most of them, or if they weren't even murders? What does that make it? Corporate manslaughter? Failure to follow NICE guidelines? This is a tragic case, but as so many inquiries, I find myself frustrated that they refuse to ask questions in plain sight. Public inquiries have evolved into the authors of undeniable truth, yet they wilfully ignore the bleeding obvious. I remember when Michael Gove raised some questions, the look of fear on the lawyer's face. How could he ask that? We mustn't allow that to be asked. Surely an inquiry looks into everything.